He served as 17 years as president, and now 14 as chairman. He's got a lifetime deal here at the City Club. I'm very honored to introduce Tom Roser. Tom?
Normally I'd leap up to this podium as Mr. Doherty does, but I just didn't want to show up. I'm delighted to celebrate what I think might well be the rebirth of the two-party system in Cook County. We have a man who came here from Croatia who could not speak the English language until he was 13. He now is a distinguished lawyer, distinguished business leader, civic leader, a man whom I am proud to introduce as incipiently the next State's Attorney of Cook County. I give you Tony Peraica.
Thank you all very much for coming today. Wonderful, distinguished group. I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you, Tom, for that kind introduction, and to the board of directors who were kind enough to invite me to speak to you today. As Mr. Doherty said, Jay said, why don't you just go up there and have some fun? So that's what I'm going to do today. And I was asking my staff before I got here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bombastic do you want me to be? And they said, why don't you stay around 8, don't scare them off as they're having lunch here. But it's really great to have all of you here. But for the grace of God, I would not be standing before you addressing all of you today as the Cook County State's Attorney candidate. And, someone asked me some time ago, why do I get involved in politics? And I'm always reminded of, and I tell them, of the Ronald Reagan answer. He was quoting Plato of some 2,500 years ago when they asked him why he wanted to be the mayor of Athens when he knows that he already corrupted the youth of Athens and they're going to kill him for certain. And he says, those who are too smart to get involved in politics get punished by being governed by those who are dumber. And, we in this state and county and city have, just look at the papers today, for example, the Tribune and the Sun-Times, and you will see corruption as far as the eye can see. And I think that the office of Cook County State's Attorney is an extremely important office, and I want to cover it in a brief period of time that I have, essentially from 2 vantage points. One is a point of use, abuse, or non-use of prosecutorial discretion, a very important concept that few people ever think about or know anything about, unless they're in the legal business, legal profession. And the other concept is one of corruption equals higher taxes. And the examples of that we have here in, as I refer to it, fondly, Crook County. The issue that is therefore before us, 2 issues. I will preface by just telling you very briefly a little bit about my background. I did come here in 1970, November of 1970, as a orphan. My father died when I was 7 years old. My mother died when I was 11 years old. And my aunt brought me here to join my sister, who was already in the United States of America. And I came here in 1970, not being able to speak a word of English, didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew, having watched plenty of John Wayne movies, that I wanted to be in the United States. I was rather disappointed when I landed at O'Hare and I was driving down Kennedy towards what I found later to be Bridgeport, that we didn't pull into downtown, and my aunt didn't own one of those high-rises, but she didn't. And I learned very quickly that the little Italian deli that they ran in Bridgeport on 31st and Wallace was a family operation that required everybody to work 7 days a week, 12, 14, 15, sometimes 16 hours a day. And the next day after landing here on November 27, 1970, I was working at that deli learning the language, which was Italian, because all of the customers, clients there, and all of the people that my aunt and uncle interacted with were Italian immigrants. And that was the first language that I learned upon arrival to Chicago. And then, of course, I went to St. Jerome and was exposed to the wonderful nuns over there who did instruct me properly. Went to Holy Name Cathedral, not too far from here at Chicago State, and graduated from high school, which was a wonderful experience, and began college at the University of Illinois, graduating with a degree in political science in 1980, and then went to John Marshall Law School while working second shift, and graduated in 1983 with a JD, a degree, and began practicing law, which is what I've been doing for the last 25 years. I also want to acknowledge the presence of someone who is very close and dear to my heart, my son Marco. Thank you for coming, Marco. I worked second shift at the First National Bank of Chicago for 8 years, from 1979 to 1987, while I was finishing college, got married, my son was born, finished law school, worked both jobs at the second shift as a supervisor at the old First National Bank of Chicago, covering all of their check processing operation, cash concentration, automated clearinghouse transactions. And then during the morning I would practice law as a solo practitioner, working typically 14 to 16 hours a day, no different than the Italian deli that I came to in 1970. And I've been working 14 to 16 hours a day ever since. The reason I do is because I enjoy what I do. I love my job. I love the challenges that present themselves every day. I love being a commissioner on the county board for 6 years now. I love being a practicing attorney. I still have a law office with 5 attorneys, a small office, 10 employees total, that I've been maintaining for the last 25 years, covering every kind of civil criminal case in both state and federal courts that you can imagine. And, there's a radical concept. Every 2 weeks, my employees want to get paid. They don't accept any excuses. So I have to go out there and make sure that I can afford to pay their salaries, pay their benefits, and I've done that for 25 years, owning my own offices. At one time, we had 3 locations. Now we're down to 1. And, of course, being a citizen politician, being a public servant is something that I take great pleasure in being and great pride. Having come from a communist country, former Yugoslavia, having lived under a communist system from birth until the age of 13, I have more of an immediate experience and knowledge of what it means not to have personal freedom and rights than perhaps most do. And once I was able to give of myself, having received the largesse of this country in every way that it can offer through BOG grants, Pell Grants, Illinois State Scholarship, guaranteed student loans, I was the beneficiary of them all and would not be standing here before you but for that kind of help from the federal and state government. I felt a responsibility to give back, and the way that I wanted to do that is through the political process, which I studied, admired, and participated in since about 1976. My whole life is kind of filled with people who along the way were great mentors and great assistants, kind of replacing my mother and father, whom I didn't have, and were advisors when I needed them the most. But also, there were many people along the way who told me that you cannot succeed. You speak English with an accent. You're not from the United States. You are this, you are that. There were all kinds of reasons given to me all along my 51 years why I couldn't win office, why I couldn't get elected, why I couldn't get anything done on the county board, why I couldn't run for county board president, and why I can't win this office for Cook County State's attorney. Well, I like to say to all the naysayers that here I am, I am standing. My motto is death before surrender, and I will never give up, never give up. There's only one sin, one shame, and that is not to engage in battle. There's no shame in losing battle as long as you have given it everything you have, everything you've got. And if you come up short, as we did in the county board president race, when we came up with 47% of the vote, when everyone said we wouldn't even get 25%, there's no shame in that. As I said, the only shame is not to fight the fight, not to try, not to give it your best. I feel very passionate about the practice of law, and I have done it with pride for the last 25 years, both on the civil and criminal side. The office of Cook County State's Attorney is a great office with a great tradition. And like any office, it has its cycles of ups and downs. And I believe that at this particular time, and for the last couple of decades, that office has not done its job. If we consider, for example, the level of corruption that has permeated our judiciary, judicial branch of government, Gray Lord investigation just being one of them. If we consider the legislative branch scandals at the city council, at the county board, at the state house and senate. I was talking to Professor Dick Simpson last week, who was my professor, along with Milton Rakoff in the late 70s when I was at the UIC, and he told me that since 1972, 1,000 elected, appointed officials and government employees have been indicted and convicted in Cook County since 1972. That's about 35 per year. Think about that for a moment. And how many got away with it without getting indicted and convicted? So the Cook County State's Attorney's Office has a great role to play in providing a system of checks and balances, a system of accountability in a functioning two-party democracy, which I would argue we lack in the city, in the county of Cook, and in the state of Illinois. If you look from the state level, every constitutional office is held by one party. Both houses are controlled by one party. At the county level, the legislative chamber is controlled by one party, 12-5. All of the constitutional officers at the county level are controlled by one party. At the city council, it's a 49-1 control of the city council by one party, and all of the city constitutional officers are controlled by one party. A functioning two-party democracy with a system of checks and balances and a system of accountability should have some oversight. And I would respectfully submit that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, in conjunction and in association and cooperation with the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney, should provide that system of checks and balances and accountability when the legislative branches, in too many cases, do not. And, the process of prosecutorial discretion is one that is at the heart of the matter. The prosecutorial discretion really means whatever he or she, the chief law enforcement officer, means or wants it to be. The state's attorney, a public prosecutor, as a public servant, an elected one at that, is really only restricted and limited by their own imagination and their desire to focus the attention of this office in any particular direction, in use of their discretion. And the only checks really are the judicial system and the judges, who are obviously bound to enforce the constitutional guidelines on the state's attorneys, U.S. attorneys, and attorney generals. And really anything goes. The Code of Professional Conduct, the ethics, attorney ethics, professional code of ethics, and the constitutional safeguards are the only safeguards that limit the use of prosecutorial discretion by a prosecutor, Cook County State's Attorney in this particular case. And it's an awesome responsibility when you really consider what that means. And my opponent has stated here on May 5th, and she has stated repeatedly, for example, on the campaign trail, that she does not see the mission of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office being one of prosecuting public corruption. I would respectfully disagree. I think it's essential that that office prosecute public corruption, because we cannot rely on the U.S. Attorney to investigate, indict, and convict all of those who engage in public corruption. And unfortunately, across the country, we are known as the model of public corruption here in Crook County. So the office with a $170 million budget, not a $96 million budget as she has represented, but a $170 million budget when you consider all of the state and federal grant monies, and an office that has just short of 1,700 employees, of whom 900 are assistant state's attorneys, has a remarkable and very important role to play in the establishment and maintenance of a system of checks and balances and accountability across the three branches of government. I believe in the process, and I believe in the concept under our federal and state constitutions of separation of powers. And unfortunately, too often, that power gets blurred, particularly in Cook County, where the legislative, judicial, and executive branches act outside of the scope of their authority, act outside of the powers that were granted to them by the Constitution and by the statutory scheme upon which these offices were built and created, including the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. And it's important that we look at those restrictions, statutory and constitutional restrictions, in light of this concept of prosecutorial discretion, which really allows the Cook County State's Attorney to direct the resources of this office in any direction that he or she would want to have them directed. I believe that corruption in Cook County equals higher taxes. I believe the reason that we have the highest sales tax in the country, for example, is because of the corruption, nepotism, insider dealing, ghost payrolling, minority contract abuses, etc., that caused the cost of government to go up. I believe that the reason that we have the kind of expenditures at the city level is largely due to patronage hiring, ghost payrolling, contract abuses, all of which are documented in the daily press on an ongoing basis, yet we have grown kind of callous. We have grown accustomed to the level and the type of rampant corruption that exists across three branches of governments, where in other places of the country, people would be aghast. They would be embarrassed. Yet here, we take it as a daily way of life because that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. Well, I would respectfully, again, disagree strongly with that conclusion. I believe that we can do better. You know, when I came to the County Board of Commissioners in 2002, I was able to form a bipartisan bloc with 3 Democratic commissioners to put together a coalition of 9 votes on that 17-member board to stop $400 million in tax increases that John Stroger wanted to enact. We were able to do that because of the cooperative nature of the bipartisan effort that was established on that board for the first time in decades. That board was known as a rubber stamp. 6 months into the first term on the county board, I'll never forget the Aflac cancer insurance contract that was brought up by John Stroger, who wanted it passed that day as an additional item on the new items agenda. And we asked for a roll call vote. Carl Hansen, God bless him, saw him recently, he's doing well, seconded my motion. I asked for a roll call to send it to Finance Committee to take a look at this multi-year $430 million contract for cancer insurance for county employees who already have the best plan that probably money can buy for $18 a month. And we took a roll call. It was 15-2, 15 votes to send it to Finance, 2 against, and John Stroger proclaimed that the noes have it and the motion fails. And as I stood there stunned, I was flipping through the rules of the board, and I said, Mr. President, I appeal the ruling of the chair. Denied. Madam Secretary, next item. And he went right along, and 2 votes overrode 15 votes. So I went around to the commissioners. I said, you know, if we don't make a stand here, ladies and gentlemen, we might as well just go home. There's no point in having a Cook County Board of Commissioners. And out of 17 commissioners, only one, Commissioner Claypool and I, went to the federal district court, and we hired the esteemed Leon Dupre to be our attorney. And the federal judge said, yes, gentlemen, 15 is greater than 2. That case was resolved rather quickly. I believe before even the answer was filed by the state's attorney of Cook County, who has among its many responsibilities the responsibility to handle a myriad of civil cases as well, which again, respectfully, my opponent does not have any experience with, because she has been a career government employee and has never worked in the private sector, never met a payroll, never paid benefits, never handled a myriad of civil work. And among the great number of duties that the Cook County State's Attorney has is the responsibility and obligation to be the chief legal advisor to the Cook County Board President and the Board of Commissioners, which is a responsibility that I am going to relish and work very diligently at. I have been on the litigation committee for the last 6 years, and I've seen the myriad of cases that come across the county board. For example, there's a case recently that was settled, if you've been paying attention, and I'm sure you have been, involving 69 West Washington fire. And that was a case that involved a $100 million settlement, which was handled by a gentleman who is the finance chair for my opponent, Robert Clifford. And I just want to read you a line here. County paid $9 million as part of the $100 million settlement to the victims of the fire at 69 West Washington. At the time, Cook County Public Guardian Patrick Murphy said, right after the October 17th, 2003 fire, quote, people died because of political clout, and they died because the politicians would spend money to buy expensive computers to reward their friends who buy tickets to upscale political dinners, but they won't put money in to make a situation safe for employees, end of quote. Cook County State's Attorney Dick Devine stated at the same time in October of 2003, quote, and he was, by the way, almost a victim of that fire, Dick Devine. He stated at the time that, quote, we won't sit still for a whitewash from a promised independent investigation, end of quote. Yet, the political donors who operated that building outside of the building code requirements, East Lake Management, Mr. Higginbottom, and others, did not really meet their responsibility to the citizens of Cook County, particularly those who ended up being victims of that fire. The obligation of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office covers a whole spectrum of duties and responsibilities. It isn't just about prosecuting criminal defendants, and that is certainly one of the most important functions. If you look at the statutory Act for state's attorneys, it covers about 15 different functions, and a lot of those, I would argue, without boring you with the details, are not performed at all or are performed poorly by the present administration. The issues of the responsibilities that one has as a Cook County State's Attorney are absolutely comprehensive and cover a whole range of activities that I would respectfully submit based on my 25 years of being an attorney in the private sector, 6 years of being a county commissioner, working as a member of the Finance Committee, Litigation Committee, and a county board, and one who has been in the private sector and understands the complexity of human nature, not only from a governmental prosecutorial point of view, but also from the human life experiential point of view, that I would bring a different paradigm and set of skills to the Office of Cook County State's Attorney. If you look at the Appleseed report, and if you look at the Egan Boyle report regarding the Burge torture cases of some 200 African-American men who between 1979 and 1984 were tortured by the members of the Chicago Police Department, and their torture was covered up for years, decades. If you look at the Trotter report of the Cook County criminal justice system, the Appleseed report, which was just recently issued, studying the Cook County criminal justice system, there is a common theme, and that is one of culture. How culture permeates and guides the actions of not only the prosecutors, but police officers, judges, public defenders, all of the people who are involved in the administration of the criminal justice system. That culture, I would respectfully submit, cannot be changed by someone like my opponent who's been there for 23 years and is the only thing that she knows and is a product of that culture and is a part of that culture. Change for the benefit of the Cook County taxpayers has to come from the outside of that culture that has permeated all of the different segments of the criminal justice administration system. If you look at the Trotter report, which was commissioned by the United States Justice Department in 2002, and was performed by the members of the American University in cooperation with all of the agencies that make up the Cook County justice system, which is the single largest court system in the world. That year, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office brought in 2002, 60,000 felony cases, criminal felony cases, some 200,000 misdemeanor cases. Of those 60,000 criminal cases, felony cases, some 35,000 were self-abusers. People were caught with drugs for personal use, not breaking and entering, not selling for profit, not committing property crimes. These were individuals who were caught sometimes for the 15th time with smaller amounts of contraband on their person. 35,000 out of 60. That includes about 12,000 cannabis, marijuana possession cases that were filed as criminal felony cases. Of those defendants, if you look at the Trotter report, who could not post bond to get out of 26th in California, or did not qualify for bond because they were repeat offenders, those defendants spent a combined 1.5 million days in detention. At $100 a day, that's $150 million spent on detaining people who are not convicted yet. They're innocent until proven guilty, who sit at 26th in California, which is a city on into itself that contains some 10,000 detainees on any given day, with some 3,500 correctional officers who watch them 24/7, with the largest kitchen in the state, a hospital within the complex, Cermak Hospital. Cook County Sheriff's Office has today a budget of $400 million with 7,000 employees for Cook County Sheriff. The Chicago Police Department now has 14,000 police officers. When you consider the other 128 municipalities that are part of the suburban Cook County, we're probably looking at 30,000 police officers carrying weapons. I'm not even including federal and state troopers and federal FBI and so forth. So what we have here is kind of what President Eisenhower called the industrial military complex. In this case, is a correctional judicial complex that the Cook County taxpayers, I believe, are not getting the best money's worth from it. We need to really take a look at the attitudes that have been perpetuated by every new legislative session, where they want to remove sentencing discretion from the judges, where they want to have 3 strikes and you're out, when you want to have everybody charged with felony. I mean, pretty soon we're going to have felony charges for dropping gum on the sidewalk, because every legislative member wants to be tough on crime, and they want to go back to their constituents and say, look how tough on crime we are. And we're getting to the point of the absurd. And what I'm saying simply is that rather than warehousing self-abusers as we are right now, and this is something that's well documented, rather than warehousing self-abusers and having them clog up the judicial system so that you can't get to the real criminals, the pushers, the offenders who are committing property and person crimes, the killers. We don't have the capacity to do that properly because the prosecutors are way down by 50-60% of their felony cases being drug possession cases. Those cases need to be looked at in a new way, as the Appleseed report suggests, which is a report put together by a compendium of the best prosecutors and defense attorneys in the county, and judges and others, which is called they advance a concept of police station adjustment of diversion programs, drug school, boot camp, day reporting. All of those need to be utilized at $20 a day per defendant versus $100 a day to warehouse someone because they cannot post bond for a self-abuse crime. We can save the taxpayers and hundreds of millions of dollars and not have the kind of budget deficits that we have year in and year out. If you look at the economic situation, looking at the Tribune today, the number of automobile repossessions is up over 10%. The number of foreclosures just in Cook County is up 55%. Normally we have 12,000 foreclosure cases filed in Cook County. This year we're going to be hitting about 45,000 foreclosure cases. If you consider the exploding balloon that will materialize regarding the credit card crisis, which is also coming down the pike, we are looking at some severe economic challenges here as a community of 5.5 million people. And what is the government response at the city, county, and state level? Let's raise taxes. Let's increase taxes. Let's chase out the business that hasn't left already into surrounding counties or surrounding states by increasing sales, real estate, income, and look at the proposals on the table. Is this the best solution? Or is the solution, which is what I joined the Republican Party for, smaller government, lower taxes, the elimination of corruption in government, which is pervasive, omnipresent, open, transparent, honest government? That is what we need to advance. You cannot throw enough money at these problems. We cannot afford to pay enough taxes to address the problems in the manner that my opponent wants to by opening community prosecution offices, which is the big item on her agenda. Those community prosecution offices are nothing but patronage havens for local politicians to employ their friends and relatives in. It doesn't reduce crime in Harvey, Fort Heights, Riverdale, Maywood. We are, ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't covered that story in your daily papers, we are known as the murder capital USA here. We have had 140 murders so far this year. Just in April, we had, I believe, 47. So we have some serious challenges here that are going unaddressed, both within the prosecution of the criminal defendants as well as the prosecution of public corruption that are going unaddressed. And I would respectfully submit, in closing, that a budget of $160 million, $167 million a year, with 900 assistant state's attorneys is large enough, without any increases, to handle all of its responsibilities, in addition to investigating, prosecuting, and convicting those who have stolen money from the taxpayers. A couple of brief examples, just in case, again, you haven't noticed along the way. We had Earl Bell, who was the chief financial officer at the Cook County government at the Provident Hospital, who tried to set up a phony company and steal $5.3 million from Provident Hospital that serves the poorest of the poor who have no place else to go for treatment. Is that the best that we can do? We have Shirley Glover, who took $180,000 in cash withdrawals from Seaway National Bank of taxpayers' federal grant monies and went on gambling trips to casinos and had fancy parties downtown at Four Seasons Hotel. Is that the best that we can do? When we have the Homeland Security grant monies played with, stolen, abused, and we have Cook County Project Shield that you will be reading about in the papers still, a project that's over $30 million in federal grant money to provide wireless communication for first responders in Cook County. That's 3 years behind schedule, and none of it works. And our fire, police, and medical staff, God forbid if there was a man-made or natural disaster, would not be able to rely on the system for communication purposes, yet we have spent over $30 million of taxpayers' money. Is that the best that we can do? I am running for this office, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe that we can do better. I believe that we can have a prosecutor that's free of political influence, as free as one can be, that will not engage in malicious prosecution or abuse of anyone based on the constitutionally protected classes under the federal and state constitutions, and we all know what they are, the protected classes. We need a prosecutor here who is not going to have, for example, their campaign finance office housed in the law firm, Query and Harrow, which does millions of dollars in business with the Cook County government in violation of the Cook County Ethics Ordinance. We are not going to, I believe, best served if we have a Cook County State's Attorney who has been there, as my opponent has for 23 years, who has fundraisers where the fugitive felons are donating money and members of the Hispanic Democratic Organization, when she will probably have to prosecute them at some point. These are issues, ladies and gentlemen, that we can, in our callousness and resistance to corruption, sometimes overlook. But I think they are very telling signs of the kind of prosecutor that we are going to or not going to have in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Thank you for listening, and I would love to hear your questions.
I'll read them. I'll put them down here. We have a lot of questions, so Mr. Peraica, this may be your toughest challenge of the day. We need short answers. Here we go. This comes from Grant Litsky, City Club member. Why do your opponents say you're such a bad person for us? You seem to make some sense.
Well, I've been married for 30 years, and my wife asks me that question all the time. Yes, I think that it's easy to overlook the obvious sometimes. You know, when you're standing right next to the tree bark, you don't see the forest. I think that what I have advocated for the last 6 years on the county board are bipartisan, non-political, common sense approaches that respect the taxpayers. And I always consider myself an advocate of the taxpayers. I pay the bills, I pay taxes. What would I want to see done if I was reading the paper, watching it on television, listening on radio? What would I want my representative to do? And that's the standard that I try to work towards every single day.
Next question. Anonymous, but maybe you can guess who it's from. Let's talk politics. Where do you see a 50% plus one vote for you in November coming from?
Good question. In November of 2006, when everyone said that we wouldn't break 25%, we were able to get 47% of the vote. I was able to get 32% of the city vote against a well-known name, Stroger, and 62% of the suburban vote. The reason we lost the race by some 80,000 votes out of 1.3 million cast is because the suburban voters chose not to come out to vote. We had a low turnout in the suburbs, 48%. Our goal was to get 65, 66% in the suburbs. We didn't get it. We got 62. We exceeded our vote projection in the city. We were hoping to get 30%. We got 32%. We won 10 wards by more than 50%. Additional 12 wards by more than 40%. including Mayor Daley's 11th ward, where I was able to get 42% of the vote. So I don't think this is going to be a primary election type race. This is a general election race where we're expecting over 2 million voters to come out in a turnout of some 75 to 80% in this presidential cycle with an open presidential race. And it's going to take about 1.1 million votes to win this race. And I feel that we're well suited and positioned to get that 50+1 based on the strong support from within the Hispanic community. And my 16th district that I represent is 40% Latino, western suburbs of Cook County. Strong support that we had in the African American community, which was 10% in 2006. We're hoping to double that to 20%. And, of course, getting the suburban vote from particularly northern tier of townships, the 11 townships in the north, where we're expecting to win by 80% plus. So I think that we're going to be quite competitive, and I believe that this race is absolutely winnable, and that's the way we're going to run it.
Another question. This is from Bob Manwith, City Club member. Little editorial comment. Given the disarray of the state and local GOP, do you expect any financial support from your party?
No.
Remember, that million is still floating around since from '94. This is from someone who used to be in politics, or probably still is in politics, Ms. Topinka. Will you use your subpoena powers as state's attorney to clean out corruption on the county board? That's a hard one.
That's a softball question. The answer is yes. And if you look at, for example, the position that I have staked out for myself on the County Board of Commissioners, I have been accosted verbally and cursed out and called all kinds of names by both Republicans and Democrats on that board because I speak the truth. And sometimes the most difficult thing for a politician is when you hold a mirror to their face and speak the truth. And I choose to do that even when it's unpleasant because you don't have to worry about what you said to whom. The story is always the same. So I appreciate the criticism that comes because that means that I am doing something right.
This is from Ed Mazer, board member. Do you have any family members who are county employees? And if so, did they get their position through taking a test? And what is your position on patronage?
I do not have any family members on the county payroll. And I oppose patronage because patronage is the reason why we have arrived to the position that we're presently in. The other element that I forgot to mention about why I think I'm going to win this race is that in light of the Rutan decree, consent decree at the state level, and the Shackman consent decree at the city level that covers the city, the county, and all of its various offices except the county clerk's office and a couple of others, prohibits political hiring, firing, transfer, promotion, overtime, or contract preferences for political reasons. And all those who didn't get the message, certainly after the affirmation by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in the Robert Sorich case, should get the message that it is illegal and they will be prosecuted. And I would prosecute those who engage in the violation of the Shackman consent decree. That's a federal consent decree, so obviously the U.S. Attorney has jurisdiction there. But at the county level, we have the ethics code that the State's Attorney of Cook County has the responsibility to prosecute the offenders of, and they don't. They choose not to. The Election Code violations, the Freedom of Information Act violations, the Open Meetings Act violations, the myriad of violations that occur throughout municipal, township, and other school districts where monies are stolen with reckless abandon, so that you have Fort Heights, for example, that can't even afford to pay their water bill because the local officials have stolen the money. Or in Harvey, where you have the members of the administration and the police department protecting the drug dealers who are dealing drugs from single-family homes in the neighborhood under police protection. That's the problem that we have here, and the state's attorney needs to step up and prosecute and take responsibility.
This is from Jason Bauman, a new member. You have established yourself as someone who is not afraid to fight corruption. Anita Alvarez spoke and thinks fighting corruption is a federal responsibility. Who is best equipped to effectively fight corruption?
I believe I am, and I believe I have shown that over the last 6 years as an independent member of the County Board of Commissioners who was not afraid to cross the aisle when the issues were right, and who was not afraid to criticize members of my own party when it was right. I believe that I have the political independence and the will to enforce the laws equally without regard to sex, race, religion, nationality, or any of the other elements that should not be considered. And I believe that the Cook County State's Attorney, most of all, needs to apply the law equally regardless of political pressures, and they will come. And I would respectfully say that someone who's been there for 23 years, who was hired by now Mayor Daley and promoted by now State's Attorney Dick Devine, does not have that kind of political independence, and it has shown itself through various cases that I can give you particulars on, that she has the ability to do it.
Change of pace. You don't have to answer this, but it's a good question. Reuben Hedlund, do you have a position on the Children's Museum?
I think that the Children's Museum should not be constructed in the site on Randolph Street, just south of Randolph Street. I believe that a museum like that should be located in another location. I believe that the City Council needs to really stand up and show its true colors as to whether or not they are going to be continued to be viewed as a rubber stamp, or are they going to stand up and do the right thing for all of the citizens of Cook County when 2 Illinois Supreme Court cases have stated that for-fee attendance in a construct on the Grand Park grounds is illegal and unconstitutional.
We could debate that, but we won't. You have a reputation as a fiery politician. To shift that, can you tell us 3 things that are good about the Stroger administration? This is the City Club of Chicago. Tom, we haven't lost our touch.
I'm glad Lance and others left. Let me think for a moment. I think that there has been a complete restructuring. You know, as Gorbachev talked about perestroika and glasnost, we have reached that kind of engagement at the County Board of Commissioners, where numerous votes, and certainly all of the important votes, are decided by a majority of 1 vote, 9-8, one way or the other. That's how close the debate and the voting is on tax increases, budgets, and important issues. I believe that with the federal court, Judge Nordberg's taking away of the juvenile detention center and placing of Mr. Dunlap as the federal monitor to administer that very, very important and sensitive institution, with the Chief Judge Evans taking over the juvenile detention facility and having that shifted from the President's office, with the appointment of soon-to-be oversight board for the Cook County Bureau of Health, with an independent and hopefully a nationally recognized public health care administrator chosen to run it on an independent basis, and that being taken away from the President's office, with the selection of a new human resource chief. You know, the FBI is looking to indict a number of people who were abusing human resource department procedures. That's going to come down the pike. So we need a good human resource administrator chief. We need a inspector general, independent inspector general, placed as soon as possible into that position, and CBA is working on that, Chicago Bar Association, to help us select it. We need the bureau chief for the public health care at $1 billion operation to administer public health, chosen as soon as possible. Once all of that is in, and it will happen within this 4-year term before 2010, I believe then that with the board input and the board's work, in addition to the some of the folks on President's staff and him, you know, not really having a choice but to go along with it, I think that we're going to provide a much better level of service at a lower cost to the taxpayers of Cook County. So therefore, that will be good.
Okay, we have 3 more questions. Many of them are duplicates, so I'll try and just leave it on to the last 3. This is from Michael Gonzalez. who's a supporter of Anita Alvarez. His question is, can you contrast your management style to that you perceive will be conducted by your opponent?
I don't know what my opponent's management style is, so I really can't comment on it. All I can do is look at the public manifestations of it. And if you, for example, look at the recent case involving the killing of two Hispanic males, Miguel Flores and Eric Lagunas, by an off-duty police officer who was drunk and then was not given a breathalyzer for 8 hours, and the charges were dismissed, and two people died, and nobody's being held accountable. I question the management style. When you have officer, for example, Abadi, who was shown on tape beating up a helpless female bartender mercilessly, and Miss Alvarez, who reviewed the tape, for example, charged him with a misdemeanor only, I questioned the management style. And I could go on, but my style is one of management by walking around. I'm a hands-on person. I put in 16 hours a day. I expect at least 12 from everybody else. And if you want to go and do something else, you're free to go out and do something else. But you will not be able to work 4 to 6 hours and get paid for 8. You will have to produce, and you will have to produce for the taxpayers of Cook County. And I expect nothing of others that I would not expect of myself along those lines.
In the Aflac case, who else voted with you? It was 15-2. Who was the lucky person? Who was?
Claypool.
Forrest Claypool. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thought we'd throw that in there. Tony, give you a chance to catch your breath. Last question. This would be the winner. Catch this time. Compare the National Republican administration with state and local Democratic administration in terms of ethics. How do we know that you will establish your own culture? You could take a breath for this one.
Excellent question, Alderman. It was purely by accident. No one has a monopoly on virtue, not the Republicans and certainly not the Democrats. And we have plenty of evidence for that at the federal, state, local, and city level, county and city level. Therefore, as one who ran as a convention delegate for John McCain in 2000 rather, I think you know whom I supported. It was John McCain in 2000. I thought he would have been an excellent president then, and I certainly believe that today. I believe that culture comes from all of the things that you acquire as an individual through work experience, training, your life experience, your education. You form your own culture over time as it is. And I believe that truth and honesty is one trait that you either learn or don't learn by the time you're 5 years old from your parents. And if you haven't learned how to be honest and tell the truth by the time you're 5, before you begin school, you probably never will. And I think the culture, when you're talking about being a public servant and being accountable to the taxpayers, is one of open, transparent operation. You're working for the taxpayers. There are no secrets. There are no confidentiality agreements. There is nothing that the public is not entitled to know unless there is a lawsuit or some court order that prevents you from doing it. My opponent, for example, has come out publicly and stated that she would not release the names of 600 police officers who have 10 or more citizens' brutality complaints against them. I would put their names on the website. I believe, for example, that those who abuse citizens' constitutional rights should be known to all. And I don't think one should have to file a lawsuit to get that kind of information, particularly in a place like Chicago, Cook County, where out of some 11,000 citizens' complaints that were filed with the OPS and IAD, only 18 cases out of 11,000 resulted in disciplinary action. It's the lowest percentage in the world. China and Russia have a better percentage.
How about a round of applause?
Thank you, sir.
Tony, another one-year membership in the City Club of Chicago, and
Treasurer.
as a conservative Republican who believes in small government, sooner or later you got to pay up. And
I'll do that right now.
no, please. And a mug for your desk.
Thank you.
And if you get elected, you can have the history of the City Club of Chicago sitting right there. People will know you, it's your mean business. We are adjourned. See you Thursday. Great job.